Welcome to Face Values, the podcast where we peel back the layers of cosmetic surgery and skincare to help you understand how your skin is aging and what you can do about it. I'm Dr. David Jack. I'm a cosmetic doctor and skincare brand founder. I'm based in London. I've got clinics in London and Edinburgh. I've got a real interest in just understanding more about how the skin ages. So I'm going to be joined by lots of guests who are real experts in the field. So I hope you enjoy and keep tuning in. So welcome to Face Values. Today we are here with Andy Daly, who is also known as the Sugar Doctor. She's a nutritional therapist, has a particular interest in inflammation and the gut. So we have a lot of questions for her. Salima's joining me tonight. Andy, tell us about your background. How did you get into this and how did you get started?
Okay. I used to be a lawyer. And so I practiced law up until my youngest daughter was born. She is autistic, on the autistic spectrum, and I always had an interest in health. So when she was born, I had all sorts of questions which couldn't be answered by the medical community. And being used to doing research, I did my own research, and I found many of the answers I had in the research. And so I decided to re-qualify. I studied for 4 years and I became a registered nutritional therapist. So I'm registered with the British Association of Nutrition and Lifestyle Medicine and with the Complementary Natural Healthcare Council. I'm also accredited with the Institute of Functional Medicine. So I practice nutritional therapy along the functional medicine lines, which means when clients come to see me, I try and identify the root cause of whatever health issue they're suffering from. And when I qualified, I was trying to think about how to brand myself. And at that time, which was 10 years ago, sugar was becoming a culprit in many different chronic illnesses because of inflammation. You know, we look at inflammation and we think, what are the triggers? And sugar is often, the main trigger. Sugar, processed foods. And so I branded myself as the Sugar Doctor, and I trademarked that, registered the trademark, also sugar safe. So my motto is to live sugar safe and to try and prevent these chronic illnesses from happening. And today I have my own practice, and I also practice with Dr. David Jack, and I have a health restaurant with my daughter in Paris, which caters for keto, vegan, paleo, and just generally we focus on unprocessed foods, organic. So that's my background.
That's your background.
In a nutshell.
Great. Yeah, yep. And tell us about sugar and the skin. So I see a lot of people that are maybe they have breakouts, they have lots of issues that they come to see me about. But how does sugar tend to affect the skin?
Well, it's all about the gut. And when people have too much sugar, that promotes the overgrowth of disease-causing or pathogenic bacteria in the gut, and it disrupts the whole gut's microbiome and the balance. And so what you see is an overgrowth of disease-causing bacteria and a dilution of the probiotic or the beneficial bacteria. And when we have that, then the gut lining becomes compromised and we start to see inflammation in the gut, which becomes systemic and triggers all sorts of inflammatory driven illnesses. So we see, obviously, when we see an increase in inflammation, we see an increase in sebum production and acne, and we also see all sorts of other inflammatory skin conditions flare up, like acne, psoriasis, eczema, rosacea.
Yeah.
So if I'm coming to see you and I need to cut down on my sugar intake, what for you is sugar?
So that is an interesting question, because a lot of people who come and see me, when I talk about sugar, they say to me they don't have sugar in their tea or coffee. So they think of sugar as white table sugar. But sugar is a very wide concept. Obviously it includes healthy sugars like complex carbohydrates. All carbohydrates are forms of sugar. So it could be that it's refined carbohydrates such as pasta, bread, sweets, cakes. Could even be that it's those carbohydrates that are healthy. So if a person has, for instance, an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine, those complex sugars feed the bacteria in the small intestine and create inflammation. So it's quite a complicated question, and it all depends on each individual client. So somebody can be thinking that they're having a really healthy diet by including all these foods, which are typical culprits when it comes to these FODMAPs, they call them, are broccoli, cauliflower, all those essential foods which actually feed the probiotic bacteria further down, prebiotics, but we need to exclude those for a while. So when it comes to triggers for inflammation, it's not only sugar, but it could be the bacteria that are fermenting the sugar that are causing the problem. So typically I would say to you, if let's say you didn't have an issue with that you should try and avoid all sorts of sugary foods that are going to cause your glycemic levels, to cause an imbalance in your blood sugar levels. Because when we have spikes and dips in our blood sugar levels, that's when we have an increase in insulin levels and inflammation.
And is that why I'm starving hungry sometimes when I've eaten something that you might not think was so great?
So that's why you get starving about 2 hours typically later, because when your blood sugar levels drop, you're immediately craving something to get that energy back. And so it's a roller coaster.
Yes.
You grab the cake or the sweet or something and they rise again. And it's very hard to get off that sugar roller coaster. But when you do, you will be surprised because you won't crave those foods. And energy levels creep back again and all sorts of health advantages.
So if someone was to come in and see you, how do you go about assessing them and seeing what it is that they're doing right or wrong?
So when they come to see me, I give them my nutritional therapy questionnaire. I like to give that to them about a week in advance because I like to get that back about 2 days before I see them. And I go through it in detail before I see them. So I've already got a picture of what's going on. And obviously, they highlight in this form what their health issue is and the reason why they want to see me and what their health goal is. But often when I look at the symptoms which they tick, I have a whole page of every system in the body and symptoms relating to that system. For example, the gut, bloating, flatulence, all sorts of issues there, skin, dry skin, flaky skin, acne, anxiety levels, mood. I have all those kind of questions relating to that. And so often, even though somebody will come to see me, for instance, a lot of the time I get balance my hormones, and I look at the questionnaire and I see there's something going on in the gut, and there's obviously I look at their diet and I see the kind of foods that they're eating, and it's often a question when I say to them, we need to start at the gut because there's no point in trying to do anything else. Even if it's thyroid, you could, back in the day, I would think, okay, iodine, maybe selenium, maybe we need to put in those or take out some of them. But then I realized more and more people I see that it's not about that. That comes at the end. We need to start at the root of it, and it's the gut.
What about something that I spend quite a lot of money on? Probiotics, prebiotics. I get really, really confused by this whole thing. I kind of pick things up willy-nilly, take them for a while, then don't. Should I be taking a probiotic when my gut feels okay, I think?
Well, this is another thing. A lot of people say, my gut feels okay, and they don't think that they've got any issues whatsoever with the gut, when in fact they do. Because it's a myth that you need to feel digestive symptoms for there to be an issue with the gut. And so when it comes to probiotics and prebiotics, at the outset, the probiotics are actually the beneficial bacteria. So the probiotics are the bacteria themselves, and the prebiotics is the food that feeds the probiotics. So, for instance, all these fermentable foods, such as the ones I mentioned, broccoli, cauliflower, onions, garlic, those are prebiotics that feed the probiotics. And we need to feed the probiotics because they make beneficial substances, which have all sorts of systemic effects. Those are actually called postbiotics now.
Like hyaluronic acid is a postbiotic, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I would say to you that probiotics, if you have got something like SIBO, an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine, you will be feeding those bacteria, which will be proliferating. If you take probiotics with fructooligosaccharides in them, that's FOS, because that feeds those bacteria. So you won't be doing yourself any good if you take those probiotics. I would say, as a general recommendation, if somebody comes to me and says, what probiotic can I take? I say you should take one called, it's a non-colonizing yeast called Saccharomyces boulardii.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
I've heard of that.
It's got mountains of research behind it. And actually, if you've got candida, it inhibits the growth of candida. So some people will say, why should I take a yeast probiotic when I've got candida? Yes, you should. And it's got all sorts of other benefits, and it doesn't contain FOS. So as a general recommendation, I would say take Saccharomyces boulardii, or just check the back of whatever probiotics you're taking to make sure that they don't have FOS in them.
Okay.
So the prebiotics, I would say you get through your food sources. But there again, if you've got SIBO, which is bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, you need to be careful with food sources of prebiotics as well.
Yeah. This is very complicated.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so bringing everything back then, I guess, for the purpose of, from my point of view as somebody who deals with skin, and for people who are aging and things like that in relation to gut, there is this thing called the gut-skin axis, which is basically the relationship between the gut and the skin.
Yes.
So how long will it take maybe before making these changes, before people start to see some difference in their skin or difference in the symptoms that they have?
It can vary because sometimes it takes a while. So when we're dealing with the gut-skin axis, we're looking at the immune system.
Yes, yeah.
Obviously, because inflammation is part of the immune system, and it's an immune response.
Yes.
And what a lot of people don't appreciate is that 80% of the immune system is housed in the gut. And the gut is the largest immune organ in the body. And so most of the immune system, the immune cells, are situated in the lining of the gut. And that's where, if we have a healthy gut microbiome, we're going to have a healthy gut barrier, because there are all sorts of signaling that takes place with the postbiotic short-chain fatty acids, which the probiotics produce, which benefit the gut lining. So if you've got a healthy gut, you've got a healthy gut lining. And obviously, if somebody comes to you with skin issues, they don't have a healthy gut lining. So if that person were to come to me, I would have to, inflammation, it's obvious that there's inflammation and excess. The immune system is overreacting. So we have to look at triggers. We have to look at what can be triggering this inflammation, because we have to remove triggers. So these triggers could be food triggers. It could be gluten, dairy, sugar, sugary foods. But it also can be bacteria or parasites or candida. So if it's just the food allergens, we eliminate those. And if it's the bacteria, I do often with clients a stool test, which is very, very detailed. It identifies about 30 different types of bacteria. And it can actually tell you. So for health, we need a diverse gut microbiome where everything's in balance. It doesn't matter whether it's E. coli or Klebsiella, those bacteria that have a bad name, as long as they're all in balance. The minute one overgrows, that's when we have dysbiosis and problems and inflammation. So if a person does a stool test, if your client who has skin issues comes to me and I do a stool test and I see, for instance, that E. coli is taken over or Klebsiella is taken over, we need to remove that, either with antimicrobials or antibiotics. And that can take some time. So once we've removed the triggers, we then replace what that person can be lacking. And there again, that test tells me, could be, we look at the whole digestive tract, could be digestive enzymes that we need to put in, could be stomach acid, because the stomach acid signals to the pancreas to produce the digestive enzyme. So we might have to put in that. And then after we've got rid of the bacteria, we re-inoculate with probiotics, prebiotics. Sometimes we even supplement postbiotics. And then we repair the gut lining. So certain nutrients like L-glutamine or zinc, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamins A, E, C. So we repair that gut lining and then we rebalance. There might be lifestyle factors that are impacting the gut microbiome, like stress or lack of exercise, lack of sleep. So that's quite full on.
It is.
So
it's interesting hearing this, because also I think so many of us lay people, let's call me, in this situation, assume that we can have a quick fix, like, I'll eat healthily for the next month, I'll take some probiotics, and this is very much me, I'll just, in the next 6 weeks, I'll make sure I do this and then it'll all be fine. But it's really vital listening to you that we're a much more intricate puzzle than we might all like to think. And that it's not necessarily about being healthy, or what I might think is healthy for a few weeks. My healthy might be different to yours, perhaps, by the sounds of it.
Yes, and everyone is unique. So with some people, that can take 1 or 2 months. But with other people, could take a year.
Right.
And so with people who come and see me, the more serious the issue, the more complex it is. And we have to do it really slowly. Some people, when they realize that it's such a long-term investment, really, they run. They run. I can always tell. I can always tell from my first consultation. I don't think I'm going to see you again.
It's quite an investment, isn't it?
Is,
And also, I suppose it's quite kind of not shaming, but everything's in the light, isn't it? When we're talking about these kind of things, you're not able to give me a magic pill. Unfortunately, you're not able to say in a week it'll all be fine. It might take a lot of.
And I'm very open and honest. When I remember a few years ago, I had somebody who heard about me through a friend of Charlotte's. I didn't, so quite young. She was about 22, 23, and she didn't know me very well, but she saw Sugar Doctor, and I guess you see Sugar Doctor and you think, is this person serious? Or, sometimes it can have some kind of connotation. And so I got this message from her, like I said, can you balance my hormones? So I sent a message back, no, it's not that easy. This is a long-term project. And actually, eventually, she came to see me, and she was with me for 3 years. Wow. She had PCOS. She had thyroid problems. She had, she had missed her period and all sorts of things. And after 3 years, she was working in some media organization, and now she's decided to study nutritional therapy.
Great.
She can't believe how well she is. So, I think if she knew that at the outset, maybe she would have run.
Yeah, definitely. Not just a case of cutting out sugar and then it suddenly gets better.
But now she's getting married and she's got her periods back and everything.
Okay, amazing.
She's really happy.
Amazing. So you would construct diet sort of plans for people and things alongside maybe using antibiotics or and supplements as well if somebody came to see you. So you would plan out everything with them over the longer time.
So
exactly
afterwards,
what they need to be using.
Yes. Obviously, I prefer antimicrobials. So what the stool test, I use a lab called Genova Diagnostics, and the stool test I use is the GI effects, which is absolutely amazing. So what that test does is if there is a pathogen, like a bacteria which has become pathogenic, it identifies the bacteria and then it will indicate all the antimicrobials and the antibiotics that it is sensitive to.
Yeah, I see.
So I'll be able to work out from that. It's very targeted. But having said that doesn't often arise.
Yeah.
It's not often that a bacteria becomes pathogenic.
Sure, yeah.
or
And
parasite.
is there any kind of genetic element to this that you either test for or you find that has an impact on the way that the gut responds to certain bacteria or foods and things like that?
A genetic element, I guess, that if one looks at histamine, for example,
sure, yeah.
there could be.
And racially as well, I'm wondering. I'm
Yeah.
from a mixed South Asian background, for example.
Yeah, it could be. So obviously we know that with autoimmune inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis,
There's definitely
there's something
variation,
genetic
yeah.
about that. And also when it comes to SIBO, the bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, the underlying cause of that, because obviously not everyone has SIBO. We're not supposed to have bacteria in our small intestine at all. So if somebody has bacteria in the small intestine, which is colonized, it's because there's an issue with the movement, the MMC we call it, motor migrating complex of the digestive tract. And that can be genetic. There can be something in that. So there are some genetic factors.
Yeah. And tell us about histamine, because I see a lot of patients that are really bothered by histamine. It seems to be an increasing problem for whatever reason, whether it's kind of contemporary lifestyle or something. Do you see much of that?
So with histamine, some people just assume it's histamine, but
What do you two mean? Sorry, when you see people, they're saying
It's
what
like-
allergic reactions.
Yeah.
So histamine, with people who have histamine intolerance, it's like they suffer from chronic allergies all year round. They have systemic reactions. It can be in the skin, it can be brain fog, it can be a chronic fatigue, symptoms that you wouldn't actually associate with histamine. That's why it's sometimes people can have debilitating symptoms. I was saying to David earlier on, I have a client who suffered for 3 years from something. It was very hard for her to get a diagnosis, but eventually it was diagnosed as vestibular dysfunction, which means she's almost like a middle ear infection, but it's not. So she's very dizzy. She was very dizzy a lot of the time, chronic fatigue.
Horrible.
And really bad. And we were actually talking one day, and I started to think that she could have a histamine issue because it seemed that she was reacting quite badly to histamine foods. So you have foods that contain histamine, high histamine foods. You have foods that liberate histamine in the body. And so I tested her. There's an enzyme that breaks down histamine that is made in the gut. It's called diamine oxidase, and you can test levels of that. And if diamine oxidase should be above 10. If the levels are below 10, there's some kind of issue with that enzyme. So it's not breaking down histamine. And when histamine builds up in the body from whatever sources, this is where you have all these strange symptoms. So I tested her diamine oxidase, and her levels were virtually non-existent. Some people don't have that enzyme. You can supplement it. You can get it from Austria. So, but she had it because her levels were about 1. And when you see that, diamine oxidase is made in the gut, and if levels are low, there's some kind of thing something happening in the gut, which is impairing this diamine oxidase. So she started actually supplementing with diamine. She's still a client, and we still have these issues with the gut, but she's excluded all these histamine foods, these histamine-liberating foods, and she's like a different person.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So
You're a detective.
I think,
bit like that.
it really, I just always want to get to the root of the problem. I can never if it just gets to me,
Yeah.
I even take these problems to bed with me at night. I always think there's got to be something.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think the histamine thing does seem to be an issue. I don't know if it is increasingly diet related, or the kind of processed foods or something like that's causing it, but I do hear a lot more about it these days.
Yeah, well, it could be because it could be impacting the enzyme
exactly,
in the gut.
exactly.
So if you have something going on in the gut, which many people do, most people don't have a healthy gut.
Yeah.
I mean, many people don't. We can achieve it, but
it takes a
not
lot of
easy.
work. Yeah. And what about supplements? So supplements for the skin, obviously, I have my thoughts on things, but
And I'm a sucker for them.
And
So.
Salima's, but what are your thoughts on taking supplements for skin issues like collagen supplements, other things?
We talk about collagen.
So,
Yeah, does it work?
Well, let's talk about collagen, because collagen is an interesting one, and obviously it has an association with sugar, because sugar, when we consume sugar, in addition to it impacting the microbiome, as we have already said, what it does is it attaches to proteins and lipids, fats in the body, in the bloodstream, during a process called, a natural process called glycation. And when it does that, it forms harmful compounds called AGEs. This is ages.
Yeah,
Actually
exactly.
accelerated ages.
Yeah.
These are advanced glycation end products.
Yeah.
And so collagen and elastin are two proteins, obviously, which we associate with flexibility of the skin, suppleness, all those sort of good things.
Yeah.
And when sugar attaches to collagen and elastin, they become stiff and inflexible. And the way they manifest, the way this is manifested in the skin is wrinkles and sagging. So if you take collagen supplements and you're having a healthy lifestyle and you're not having all of these sugars and processed foods, then I would say perhaps. But if you are having, you can't compensate for an unhealthy lifestyle by taking the collagen, because the sugar is going to attach to this collagen too.
as much
The
as-
same
Yeah.
applies to any dietary collagen that you consume.
Yeah, totally.
know?
Well, I guess that my thoughts on it are if you eat meat, then you're getting plenty of collagen, probably from meat proteins,
Right.
and essentially, I guess it's hydroxyproline, which is the key amino acid in collagen that you're maybe not getting if you're vegan, and I think that's probably the main thing that you're getting from a collagen supplement if you're taking it in a kind of exogenous form.
Yes, I have like a powder.
Yeah, exactly. But
Do you notice the
I
difference?
think that
No,
No.
but I mean, no, I really
doesn't
don't.
stop you buying
Can I
it.
tell you
But it's
something?
but that's the problem, isn't
Yeah,
it? Because I
exactly,
don't
'cause
notice a
it's such
difference,
a-
but
yeah.
I kind of think,
Placebo effect.
yes,
Yeah.
I ought to. I better.
Yeah.
Do you eat meat?
Yes. Yeah.
So let me tell you something from experience,
Please.
personal experience, and with my clients. One of the protocols I sometimes put people on for autoimmune issues is it's called the GAPS protocol, gut and psychology, but it involves bone broth, and it involves consuming bone broth for about 2 weeks, well, much longer than 2 weeks, but only bone broth for about 2 weeks, and then you add in the meats and certain vegetables, but when you make your bone broth, or I guess you could buy it, but it's so easy to make the bone broth. And after about 2 or 3 days of having the bone broth, you will notice that your skin will fill out.
Right.
It's incredible. So you can see it from certain forms of dietary, especially. I mean, I'm only talking about bone broth. I've noticed that. I can notice it straight away.
But I guess it's rich in some
It is
vitamin
because
C
and collagen,
and
because you boil the bones for about
Calcium as
24
well.
hours. And all of the
all the stuff's released.
healthy fats.
And So what supplements aside from collagen, which I'm slightly dubious about taking animal-based supplements,
Yes.
if you are eating meat, but if you're wanting to kind of improve your skin, what sort of things
yes.
have some evidence behind them, would you say?
So when it comes to collagen, there is chlorella. which is freshwater algae. That is absolutely incredible. So chlorella boosts the production of collagen. Doesn't actually contain collagen. And that is really incredible, and it has all sorts of other benefits. The one I use is I use a supplement called Chlorenergy, which is absolutely amazing. It has all of these benefits, and omega-3, it's rich in omega-3 fatty acid. So also silica. Silica also helps the
for my
body,
nails.
and also collagen. It helps synthesize collagen. Other supplements, I mean, it's important to appreciate that, as with everything, one has to be able to absorb the supplement.
Yes, of course.
So if one has some kind of issue in the gut, absorption of these supplements, I mean, you can take them. You're not going to be seeing much benefit, but obviously for the skin, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, omega-3 fatty acids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So essentially, it all starts with the gut.
It does.
Yeah,
it does. It does. It has such systemic effects because obviously, like I said, the immune system is housed in the gut, and inflammation. If we have a lot of inflammation in the gut, it's not only going to affect the skin.
Yeah,
it's going to affect everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And also glycation, I guess, of proteins within the skin itself. Then causes inflammation in the skin itself because your immune system recognises the proteins as being different. So
and
so
aging.
it starts to break down those proteins. So,
and also about those compounds, they also form in foods. Which it forms inside your body. These AGEs, these advanced glycation end products, but also in foods which are exposed to high heat methods of cooking. So baking, grilling, frying, roasting. And if you think of it, all these processed foods are exposed to all these high temperatures. So, so one should try and limit those methods of cooking and poach, steam, boil, and just limit your intake of all these processed foods.
I remember you telling me this a few years ago, and it's quite interesting to see the difference between, I guess, Western cooking methods and, say, Japanese. And you see the difference in the skin in people who are in their 80s in Japan versus the 80s here who have steamed and boiled and
all those broths.
All of these broths and what do you call it? The Korean soups and everything like that. Yeah. Pho. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So it's it's interesting to see it over a long period of time what it actually does.
Yes.
So,
And also to be reminded by our gut detective here that the long termism of all of this.
Exactly.
Not being a short term fix, which I'm always desperate for. But
I know. I mean, obviously, so many people can actually identify triggers of inflammation. I mean, you know when you eat something, how you feel after you've eaten it. And I always say to people, that's the first step. Eliminate those triggers because they're causing inflammation.
Yeah.
So if you're bloating after you having cauliflower, broccoli, onions, which is often the case, IBS, 60% of IBS is SIBO, the bacteria in the small intestine. Cut out those foods. Obviously, you have to reintroduce them at some stage. So you have to work on a protocol to get rid of the bacteria. But if it's gluten, some people say to me they don't feel well after gluten, then you need to cut it out.
Yeah.
It's willpower.
That's the other I have to say I would be quite happy to cut out broccoli forever.
Yeah, same.
Anyway, Andy, thank you so much for that. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to?
Well, through David Jack.
Yes,
David Jack Clinic or Sugar Doctor.
Your Instagram is at Sugar Doctor,
isn't
it?
Sugar Doctor UK.
Great. Perfect. Thank you
very
much.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
So that was Andy Daly. In this episode, we talked all about sugar and the skin, sugar and the gut as well. We found out that gut is really important when it comes to the general health and the health of the skin. So if you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform that you listen to your podcast on, and I hope that you join on the next episode.